People with autism, how would you describe what autism feels like to someone who doesn't have it? Let me give you a non-autism example first. At the age of 8, I was diagnosed as legally blind, worse than 2200 vision in both eyes. 2250 on one side, 2450 on the other. Nobody else noticed because they thought that all the weird stuff I did to cope just seemed like weird little personality quirks or developmental disorders. Then at the age of 8 I got my first pair of glasses and found out that there was a whole sense that everybody around me had it all along, that I hadn't, a possibility that had never occurred to me. I had noticed that other people could play catch much better than I could, that they could navigate unfamiliar spaces better than I did, that they could recognize objects from farther away than I could, but it never occurred to me that they had a sense I didn't have. I just thought they were smarter than I was. I just thought I was really stupid. Otherwise, why could they memorize room layouts faster than I could, calculate where the ball was going to show up based on shifting vague silhouettes in the distance more accurately than I could, decode fuzzy shapes and colors faster than I could? Obviously they were just smart and I was just stupid. So imagine how I felt when I found out that other people can, mostly, less often than they think, tell when they've hurt somebody else's feelings just by looking at them. That other people can see all kinds of subtle gradations of emotion that are invisible to me. It didn't occur to me until I was in my late 20s or early 30s and read my first magazine article about autism as a spectrum disorder that I realized that, once again, other people weren't smarter than I am about other people's internal states. They literally have an instinctive sense that I lack. But there are no glasses for autism. So 30 years later, I'm still having to navigate emotional conversations the way that 6-year-old me had to navigate a room after the furniture had been moved, more slowly than anyone else and with intense concentration. This was great to read. Thank you for sharing your perspective. This is remarkably well said. I especially appreciate how you phrased that last bit. Like everyone else is in on an inside joke that you don't know. And when you do know it, everyone thinks you don't, so they leave you out of it still. I thought that's what regular life feels like anyway? Is it possible to be autistic and just never know? Yes, it is entirely possible. I wasn't diagnosed till I was 55. I thought it was just me, hadn't even considered I might be on the spectrum till I met someone with Asperger's and they said they thought I had it. Did a bunch of research, some reading, went to seminars and heard Temple Grandin speak a couple of times, had a coworker with a son tell me the same thing, and decided I probably had it. Eventually went to be diagnosed. The doctor talked to me for over 2 hours, and walked out having been diagnosed. The doctor told me I was most definitely on the spectrum, no doubt about it. He also told me I should write a book, took 5 steps out of the doctor's office and nearly fell. I had to stop for a minute. I got lightheaded and I suddenly felt like a couple 100 pounds lifted off my shoulders in that moment. As to how it feels, I have always felt like I had a really thick veil around me that filtered a lot of stuff out so that life/people/situations came through somewhat garbled and unintelligible. I just do not get people. Sometimes I have to actively think about what they are actually meaning versus what I understand them to be meaning. I have a couple of friends who I go to for translation when I don't get something. And Google and Reddit are some of my best friends. May I ask what avenues you went through to confirm your diagnosis? I've been speaking with my therapist about the possibility of being on the spectrum myself but haven't been able to find any way to test for adults. I'm in my 30s and my whole life has been filled with feelings and situations I've seen described in this thread, and I've already suspected for some time that I am on the spectrum. It seems like nobody can give me a definitive answer. As of now, I've been diagnosed with AD, major anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder. Seeing it described as being in a play where everyone has the script except me resonates on such a deep level. Your therapist should be able to refer you. I got to it the hard way. My HMO required me to go to see someone who would evaluate whether I should be referred or not. The guy was an overwhelming butthole with control issues and refused to refer me. I got the distinct impression from the officious jerk that he was enjoying having control, especially the way he talked down to me. He did, however, give me the name of someone for something else we discussed. When I spoke to her, she asked how I was referred to her and I told her what happened. She was really upset, said the guy was a jerk, and immediately referred me so I could see a psychiatrist. I got the distinct impression that it wasn't the first time he had pulled something like that. Yes, especially if you're born female because they have different symptoms and scientists mainly study men with it, it goes unrecognized. Amen to that. Women with it camouflage better. Know that firsthand. I learned to fade into the woodwork very early in life. If nobody sees the weird kid, they don't get bullied or abused. Or get labeled as shy and quiet, when it's actually a lack of social skills and understanding. Leads to bullying, loneliness, and being the outcast at school. I hated school so much, best years of your life my arse. At work I'm just afraid someone will catch me unawares, so masking uses up 100%, brain CPU just trying to analyze all the interactions going on around me, and respond appropriately. I also tend to feel emotion too much, can't cope with it, and end up in a shutdown state because I can't process it. It's easier to avoid people than have to deal with all this crap going on inside. It actually is, but I wouldn't go based on this statement. However, it's extremely common to get diagnosed later on in life because the spectrum is so broad and you might not have as clear symptoms. Also, I don't have autism, so I'm really sorry if I've worried that awfully and labeled anyone. You're more than welcome to correct me. Most of what everyone else has said, but I'll add this: feedback loop. Sometimes things just get stuck in your head. Not just songs or movies, but things you or someone else has said in conversation, which will then be repeated for no apparent reason. I catch myself saying the same things I've already said under my breath, but I'm not trying to understand the what or why of it. I just do it. Epping hate it when things get stuck. Nothing to do about it either except relax or repeat the exact way that random person said hello in my head for 4 hours straight. Wait. Do I have autism? Okay, to all of you asking, do I have autism? First of all, no one here can tell you that. We don't know you well enough. Second, I don't have autism, but I do have ADHD. And from how it's been explained to me, I am pretty sure autism works in a similar way to ADHD when it comes to diagnosing it. Basically, everyone exhibits one or a few symptoms of ADHD. Everyone zones out sometimes or procrastinates sometimes, or struggles with executive functioning sometimes. This does not mean you have ADHD. So then how do you tell if you have ADHD? It's based on the number of symptoms, their frequency, and their severity. If you are experiencing more than a few symptoms of ADHD on a regular basis, and it interferes with your ability to function, then it's time to look into a diagnosis. Think of it this way. If you get occasional headaches, ones that hurt but aren't super debilitating, that's probably normal. But if it's happening every day, or they are so severe you can't perform your daily activities, or you have a bunch of other concerning symptoms, then, there's a good chance there is some underlying issue that you need to get checked out. The key lies in the extent, frequency, and severity of your symptoms. I am so glad you wrote this. People wondering, this is a good explanation. Same thing with OCD, everyone has occasional obsessions, compulsions, and even obsessive compulsions, but the D stands for disorder, which specifically means your symptoms are bad enough that it starts to F up your life. Basically, if your life isn't being actively effed up by something, then it's not a disorder. In which case, lucky you. Must be nice. I feel like this needs to be shouted from the mountaintops or something similar to it. A few years ago, when mental illness started becoming a more talked about topic and certain disorders were less vilified, pockets of the internet had an obsession with diagnosing themselves and, in weird cases, other people and even characters purely for exhibiting one or two traits. It got ridiculous, with half of Tumblr claiming to have borderline personality disorder. What often isn't expressed in all those resources people are pulling this from is that it's not about a checklist, it's about how those traits impact your life and relationships. If it's genuinely disruptive, that's when it's an illness or disorder. Much like how sneezing a bit doesn't mean you have a major crippling allergy. I'm surprised you didn't mention it's also a possible symptom to OCD. Yep. I've got OCD and I get crap stuck in my head constantly. Good explanation for a lot of mental illnesses. We all experience some of the things in a certain diagnostic list at one point in time. But if you're experiencing several of them for an extended period of time, you're not feeling well, I'm guessing, and that's a problem. Then you should seek help. But what you shouldn't do is seek the opinion of people on a social platform, take their advice and self-diagnose yourself. Go to a doctor if you're seriously feeling unwell in any capacity. Probably not. Everyone is on like a spectrum, if you like, from people with extreme symptoms like my cousin who can barely talk or express himself at 7 to barely any like me who just doesn't understand emotions properly. No, this one thing doesn't mean you have autism. We all do things that will resonate with ASD, or OCD, or ADHD, etc. I count things in even numbers, but if it's an odd number it doesn't cause me crippling anxiety and I don't have to count every single thing, so I'm not OCD. I just do something that might look like OCD. Also a symptom of ADHD, unfortunately. Hate getting stuck repeating the same number over and over in my head for 12 hours straight, or repeating a small section of a song in my head for the whole workday. Only way I've found to block it out is music, distract my brain with something else to focus on. Song riffs. I have been looping a Taylor Swift, grimacing face, song for the last 4 hours. So apparently the song wasn't Avril, and Avril is from the early 2000s, not 90s. I distinctly remember listening to her in HS, but the memory is wrong because I was in college by then. So weird. Edit, wrong musician and wrong time period. Yeah, that's like an OCD type thing we get, but not OCD apparently. I know I have mild OCD for sure, pretty sure I'm not on the spectrum, but I can confirm that the looping is common. As a kid I couldn't even control it, just repeating certain words and phrases like a mantra until they sounded correct to me. Or if a certain thing I said got a positive reaction, I'd dwell on it and repeat the scenario in my head. Wait, is that an autistic thing? I do that a few times a week, and I've done it for as long as I can remember. It's weird, I say a sentence, and then I repeat it very quietly to myself, and it's completely unconscious. Edit, first time I searched it up, it's apparently called palalia. It is palalia. My daughter does this and I was trying to find the term for what she was doing. My wife gets pissed saying I'm trying to diagnose our child with autism, which is not the case at all. She does this, is sometimes, too much, other than that, neurotypical. My son, however, is 18 months older, is autistic, is nonverbal, and has sensory processing disorder, which senses and what extent we don't completely know because he can't tell us. He has echolalia, where he will once in a while repeat things we say perfectly, and then never say that thing again. He stims incessantly, following lines on the floor, plays with toys that have repetitive songs or sayings, sometimes mimics the sounds in almost perfect tonation/inflection/pitch, but still does not speak without being prompted. He flails his hands, bashes his head, and needs deep pressure therapy often, by announcing most squeeze, which he picked up through repeated therapy sessions. With boatloads of ABA therapy, feeding therapy, occupational therapy. And now an amazing teacher in his public school who incorporates all of this and more any way she can. He will now read a book to his teacher, no one else. But it is amazing. We know it is all there, just isn't forming or following any standard script a parent might expect. I have high hopes he will gain more functionality, but nobody in the neurotypical world really understands how wide this spectrum really is. I actually do this as well, but I have not been diagnosed with autism or seen any signs that relate to it. Is this just a thing that people do? Oh, I hope so, because this is absolutely me too. Random words or phrases, it's like they just get caught somewhere between the frontal lobe and monkey lobe. I catch myself saying the same things I've already said under my breath, but I'm not trying to understand the what or why of it. I just do it. I just read out loud this answer to my partner, who does this all the time. He just admitted to me that he is on the spectrum, which I've suspected for a while now. Thanks for posting this original poster. Imagine if human sensory had settings, and all of them were at maximum. No matter how hard you try, no matter what you say, you can't make people who don't feel the same truly understand how bad it is. Everyone thinks you're exaggerating or making excuses for yourself. I got wimp a lot growing up. Overly sensitive, they said to me. Edit, to the people who think, well, you are, overly means more than is normal, necessary, or reasonable. Yes, I am more sensitive to some things than you, but that does not make me abnormal. You are just as abnormal to me, and my view is just as valid as yours, even if I'm different than you. In a group of people who aren't neurotypical, the different one would be you. How would you feel if they started saying you aren't sensitive enough, and exclude you, pointing out what makes you different when you get upset? Imagine that was your friends, family, and partner doing that to you your whole life. It's not nice. And then people have the gall to say we don't have empathy, when it's them who feel justified in being horrible and abusive to us when we don't act the same way they think we should to be normal. If it makes you feel any better, I have ADHD, and I was always labeled as a kid that socialized too much and didn't pay attention, but in reality, it's one of the symptoms for women with ADHD. You talk too much because your brain is going 1,000,000 miles per hour. I didn't get diagnosed until freshman year of college. Yeah, ADHD here as well. I can't count how many times I got called lazy or unmotivated. Autism seems very foreign to me, but being blamed for things outside my control really hits home. Except for the ones that are set to nothing. Hot or cold water. Might as well be on the sun or in the Antarctic. Break an ankle. It doesn't hurt. I can just feel the bones grinding together when I stand up and don't want to cause permanent damage. Sensory processing disorder, not on the spectrum unless you consider sensory processing disorder to be on the really high functioning side, but 100% related either way. I go from overheating to freezing within seconds or minutes. It's really exhausting coming inside from the cold and rushing to undress as quickly as possible so I don't feel like I'm going to pass out or have a panic attack. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. I'm old. Old enough that clocks in school used to actually make a tick sound. Every second. Like clockwork, haha. That's when I started thinking maybe I was different. That awful ticking sound. Drilled into my head so much I wanted to break the clocks. First I have to know what not having autism is like. People without autism, how would you describe what not having autism feels like to someone who has it? Agreed. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.